In the Middle Ages, it was common practice to bury a bishop or priest with a chalice and paten, the cup and plate used for the wine and the bread at Mass. Celebrating Mass is a priestly function, so a chalice and paten were the supreme symbol of priestly ministry. Just as people today are sometimes buried wearing a football shirt or a uniform or with something else that was significant in their lives, so in the Middle Ages, priests and bishops were buried with a chalice and a paten, the supreme symbol of their priestly ministry. They were usually made of relatively inexpensive pewter and were often bought by priests in readiness for their burials. Actually, pewter vessels were forbidden for celebrating Mass since the 12th century. So we know that when we find ones made of pewter, they weren't ones that the priest had actually used, but were symbolic ones bought in readiness for burial. Gilbert Swinfield was Chancellor of the Cathedral, one of my predecessors. He died in 1299 and was buried in St. Catherine's Aisle, the north choir aisle of the cathedral. When his tomb was opened in the 1840s, this pewter chalice and paten were discovered inside it, along with some leatherware and lengths of braided fabric. The chalice and paten are small in medieval style and are totally undamaged. The chalice was placed upright near Gilbert's right shoulder, and it still showed signs of the wine it had contained. You can see that there. Partially burnt tapers in the form of a cross lay across the paten, and you can see too where a wafer of communion bread was placed on the paten. Gilbert's uncle, Richard Swinfield, was Bishop of Hereford, and he'd made Gilbert one of the cathedral's canons. Gilbert was a scholar who'd studied in Oxford and Paris and became involved in his uncle's campaign to secure the canonization of Thomas Cantilupe. After his tomb had been opened in the 1840s, the objects in it were removed, and the Victorian restoration of the cathedral covered the place of the grave with new, neat tiles, so the grave disappeared. But in 2015, during restoration of St. John's Walk, workmen lifted a stone paving slab and discovered part of an inscription face down under it. Gilbertus de Swinf. It was part of Gilbert's tomb, reused by the Victorians as a paving slab elsewhere. For over 500 years, though, not just Gilbert, but this chalice and paten had lain beneath it in the cathedral.